I always thought that the biggest pain isn't caused by the traitors themselves, but by the small details that reveal the truth. That April morning, I returned from the workshop earlier than usual. The kitchen cabinet order had been postponed for a week, and I decided not to waste the day. I could finally finish that bookshelf for the living room I'd promised Linda a month ago. We met 7 years ago in Indianapolis at a handmade furniture exhibition. She was working at a consulting company then, and came there with a client. I'm William, an ordinary carpenter who loves the smell of fresh wood and the quiet of my workshop. She was Linda, bright, energetic consultant who always knew what she wanted from life. Our Labrador, Bailey, greeted me joyfully at the door. I scratched him behind the ear and noticed Linda's car wasn't in the driveway. She'd said that morning she was going to Sharon's, her friend who lives a few blocks from us. I'll be back by lunch, she said, kissing me goodbye. I looked into the garage to check if I'd left my chisel set there. That's when I noticed the gas canister I keep for the lawnmower. And then one detail struck me. Yesterday evening, I'd filled up our Honda CR-V's tank completely. I was certain because I always fill up the car on Tuesday after work before the Wednesday trip to the lumber supplier. A habit developed over years. I opened the app on my phone that showed Linda's car fuel level through the vehicle's communication system. The indicator showed less than a quarter tank. The trip to Sharon's and back would take a maximum of a liter of gas, maybe a liter and a half with traffic. But much more had been used. At first, I dismissed my suspicions. Maybe she stopped somewhere else. The supermarket? Her parents? But for some reason, something clenched inside. I'd never been paranoid, but for the last 2 months Linda had been acting strange. Not drastically different, but absent. When I told her about a new project, restoring an antique dresser for a museum, she nodded, looking somewhere past me. When I suggested going to Brown County for the weekend to see the spring bloom, she refused, citing fatigue. I made myself coffee and sat on the porch. Bailey lay down at my feet. I'm being paranoid, I said aloud to him. But it brought no peace. Linda returned at 2 in the afternoon. She looked satisfied, even humming something to herself as she got out of the car. Hi, honey. You're early today, she kissed me on the cheek. How did the client meeting go? They postponed it. How about you? How's Sharon? Oh, wonderful. We discussed her new project. She's thinking of opening her own yoga studio. I nodded. Linda went into the kitchen. I heard her pouring water. Everything seemed normal. Maybe I really was being paranoid? But the next morning, when Linda left for work, I couldn't restrain myself. Her laptop stayed home. She usually took it, but today she said she'd be in meetings outside the office all day. I knew the password. We never hid access to phones or computers from each other. It was part of our trust. Opening the laptop, I didn't know what to look for at first. I checked the browser history, nothing suspicious. Then I opened the messengers. And here I found something strange. In Telegram there was an archive. I'd never used this function and didn't even know Linda used it. There was one archive chat with a contact named Lewis. I opened it. The first message was dated November last year, 5 months ago. Hi. Were you also at that concert in Fountain Square? Can't forget your smile. Linda replied, "Ah, yes. It was an incredible evening. Didn't think I'd meet someone interesting on Tinder." I read further, and with each message it became harder to breathe. They messaged almost daily. Discussed music, work life. Lewis worked as a mechanical engineer at the Rolls-Royce plant here in Indianapolis. Talked about his projects, about travels. Linda shared her thoughts, joked, flirted. And then, in January, the tone of the correspondence changed. Can't stop thinking about you after yesterday. Me too. Lewis, this is wrong, but I can't stop. Meet tomorrow. I know a place by the lake. I closed my eyes. My hands trembled. I continued scrolling. March. William is going to a woodworking exhibition in Fort Wayne for the weekend. Can we go somewhere? Great idea. How about that rock festival in Bloomington? You said you love live music. I remember that weekend. Linda said she was going with Sharon to a spa resort. I even gave her money for treatments. $300. Further, I found photos. Linda and some man at the festival. They were hugging, kissing. In the background, a stage, crowd, spring sun. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen. Bailey whimpered quietly downstairs, sensing something was wrong. The next 2 weeks were hell. I pretended everything was fine. Kissed Linda goodnight, made her coffee in the morning, told her about work. And slowly gathered information. I learned she was taking money from our joint account. Small amounts, $50, $100. Lunch with colleagues, Gift for Sharon, new shoes. Actually, for hotels, restaurants, concert tickets with Louis. I learned she was seeing him at least once a week. Sometimes during working late, sometimes during visits to friends. But what struck me most was something else. In one message Louis asked, "Do you love him?" Linda replied, "Yes. I know it sounds crazy. I love William. He's kind, reliable, takes care of me. But with you it's completely different. Like before I got married the first time, and everything went wrong. William is stability. And your passion. I need both, understand." I didn't understand. How can you love and betray at the same time? How can you talk about stability while destroying a family? That evening when Linda returned from work, I was sitting in the living room. On the table lay a printed screenshot of their correspondence. "William, what happened?" She froze in the doorway, seeing my expression. "Sit down," I said quietly. She approached, saw the paper on the table. Her face changed, first surprise, then understanding, then horror. "I can explain." "Don't," I interrupted. "I read everything. Everything. From the very beginning." Linda fell into the chair, was silent for a minute, then spoke. "William, I didn't want this to happen. It's just, one day I opened Tinder. I was bored, lonely. You're constantly in the workshop with your boards and saw. I knew you were working for us, for our future, but you decided to fuck someone else," I finished for her. 5 months, Linda. 5 fucking months. She cried. I looked at her and felt nothing. No anger, no pity. Emptiness. "I don't love him," she whispered. It was an escape. From routine, from me," I finished. "From our life. From everything we built for 6 years." The next day, I went to a lawyer. Victor Hendricks, an old friend of my father's, experienced attorney. I showed him all the evidence. Correspondence, account statements, photos. "You have a strong case," he said. "With all this evidence of infidelity, we can get a fair division of property." But I didn't just want a fair division. I wanted her to understand what she lost. Over the following months, I meticulously documented everything. Every late night, she claimed to be working. Every weekend trip, she said was with girlfriends. Every unexplained expense from our joint account. I kept detailed records, took screenshots, saved receipts. I wanted an airtight case, not just for the divorce proceedings, but for my own sense of justice. I installed that tracker in our car, the one Victor recommended. Technically legal, since both our names were on the registration. The data it provided was damning. Linda's car made regular trips to a specific address on the east side of town during her lunch hours. The same motel, week after week. Sometimes she'd be there for an hour, sometimes 2. Other times she went to an apartment complex in Broad Ripple, Lewis's place, I later confirmed. The hardest part wasn't gathering the evidence. It was maintaining the facade. Every morning I woke up next to a woman I'd loved for 7 years, knowing she'd spent the previous afternoon in another man's arms. Every dinner conversation where she talked about her day at work, I knew she was editing out hours of her life. Every kiss goodnight tasted like betrayal. I started working longer hours in my workshop, partly to avoid her, partly because the physical labor helped. There's something therapeutic about working with wood, the way it responds to your tools, the way you can shape something beautiful from raw material. I wished relationships worked the same way. I wished you could sand down the rough parts, apply some finish, and make everything whole again. But life isn't that simple. 3 weeks after I discovered everything, Linda came to me with a proposition. We were in the kitchen, she was making tea, I was reading the newspaper. "William, I've been thinking," she started, not meeting my eyes. "Maybe we need some time apart. Not a divorce, just a break. To figure out our feelings." I looked up from the paper. "A break?" "Yes. Just a few weeks, maybe a month. We could both use some space to think about what we really want." I almost laughed. She wanted permission to be with Louis openly, without the guilt of sneaking around. She wanted to have her cake, and eat it too. "Sure," I said calmly. "Take all the time you need." She looked surprised. Probably expected me to fight, to beg her to stay, to ask what I'd done wrong. But I just nodded and went back to my newspaper. "Really?" she asked. "Really. I think some space would be good for both of us." That night she packed a bag and went to stay with her sister downtown. She said she'd check in regularly, that we could still talk. I just nodded. The moment her car left the driveway, I called Victor. "She wants a break," I told him. "She just moved out." "Perfect," he said. "That makes things easier. Keep documenting everything. And William, don't sleep with anyone else." Don't even go on a date. We need you to be the innocent party here. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. I spent the next week alone in our house. Bailey was my only company. I'd take him for long walks in the evening, past the houses of neighbors who'd known us as a couple, past the coffee shop where Linda and I used to go every Sunday morning, past the park where we'd had our first date. Everything reminded me of her, of us, of what we'd been. But I also felt something else. A strange sense of clarity. For months I'd been living in a fog, sensing something was wrong, but unable to pinpoint it. Now that I knew the truth, as painful as it was, at least I could see clearly. I decided to reach out to Lewis. Not for confrontation, that would come later. I just wanted to see who this man was. What did he have that I didn't? I found him easily enough. His Facebook profile was public. Lewis Donovan, mechanical engineer, 34 years old, divorced 2 years ago. His profile was full of photos from concerts, hiking trips, rock climbing adventures. He looked like the kind of guy who'd never settle down, who valued freedom and spontaneity over stability and commitment. Everything I wasn't. I'm a carpenter. I wake up at 6 every morning, go to my workshop, come home at 6 in the evening. I spend my weekends working on projects or doing home repairs. I'm reliable, predictable, boring. Linda had said she loved that about me, my stability. Apparently, she'd lied. Or maybe she'd loved it once, and then gotten bored. I thought about reaching out to Lewis directly, but Victor advised against it. Let him think he's getting away with it, he said. Men like that always slip up eventually. Give him enough rope to hang himself. So I waited, and watched. Through the tracker, I could see Linda's car spending most nights at Lewis's apartment. She'd come back to her sister's place in the mornings, presumably to shower and change for work. But her nights belonged to him. I wondered if she was happy, if this was everything she'd wanted, if Lewis made her laugh the way I used to, if she felt guilty at all, or if she'd convinced herself this was justified somehow. 2 weeks into the break, Linda called me. Hi, her voice was soft, almost tentative. Hi. How are you? Fine. You? I'm okay. A pause. William, I've been thinking a lot about us. And I think maybe we should try therapy. When I come back. If you're willing. I almost said yes. Almost fell into the trap of hope. But then, I remembered the screenshots on my computer. The photos from the festival. The hundreds of messages where she'd planned her deception. Maybe, I said noncommittally. We can talk about it. Okay. Good. That's good. Another pause. I miss you. I miss you too, I said, and it was true. I miss the woman I thought she was. I miss the life I thought we had. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room for a long time. Bailey rested his head on my knee, as if he understood. The next morning, I did something I'd been planning for a while. I went to that coffee shop, the one near the Rolls-Royce plant where Lewis got his morning coffee. I'd seen it on the tracker data, noticed the pattern. Every weekday, 8 a.m., he stopped there for 15 minutes. I got there at 7:45 and ordered coffee. Sat at a table near the door. Waited. He arrived at exactly 8, just like clockwork. Tall, athletic build, wearing jeans and a Rolls-Royce polo shirt. He looked tired but content, the way men look after a night with a woman they're excited about. I let him get his coffee and turned toward the door before I stood up. Lewis, I said as if I was surprised to see him. He turned, looked at me with polite confusion. Yes. William, Linda's husband. I extended my hand. His face went pale. He didn't take my hand. Don't worry, I said pleasantly, lowering my hand. I'm not here to make a scene. Just wanted to meet the man my wife's been spending so much time with. I don't want any trouble, he stammered. No trouble, I assured him. Just a conversation. Man to man. He glanced around, probably looking for an escape route. But we were in a public place, and I was being perfectly friendly. It would look worse if he ran. Look, I know about you and Linda, I continued, keeping my voice level. I've known for a while now. And honestly, I'm not even angry anymore. That seemed to confuse him. You're not? No. I mean, I was furious. But then I started thinking about it, and I realized something. You actually did me a favor. A favor? Yeah. See, Linda and I have been together 7 years. And for the last couple of years, things have been stagnant. I think we both knew it, but neither of us wanted to admit it. So we just kept going through the motions. I took a sip of my coffee. You shook things up. Made her feel alive again. Made her realize what was missing in her life. Louis shifted uncomfortably. I didn't mean to cause problems. No, I'm sure you didn't. I'm sure when you met her on Tinder and started this thing, you weren't thinking about her husband at home. About the life we built together. About the promises she'd made. My voice remained calm, but I let just a hint of steel creep in. But that's the thing about affairs, isn't it? They exist in a bubble. All passion and excitement, no real-world consequences. Until the bubble pops. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. Nothing. I just wanted to meet you. To see what kind of man my wife chose over me. I studied him. You know what's funny? You're not even that different from me. Similar age, similar build. Both working men with normal jobs. The only real difference is that you're single and I'm married. Or was married. Past tense. Linda said you two were having problems, he offered weakly. Did she? That's interesting. Because until 5 months ago, I thought we were fine. Happy even. But I guess I was wrong. I smiled without humor. Tell me something, Louis. Did Linda ever tell you about her first marriage? He shook his head. It lasted 3 years. Ended because her husband developed a drinking problem. At least, that's what she told me. But now, I wonder if there was more to it. If maybe she has a pattern of getting bored, looking elsewhere, blaming her partner for not being exciting enough. She's not like that, Louis protested, but he sounded uncertain. Isn't she? She's been lying to me for 5 months. Taking money from our joint account to pay for hotels and dinners with you. Telling me she was with friends while she was actually in your bed. You think someone who can do that to their husband won't eventually do it to you? I could see the seed of doubt taking root. Good. Something to think about, I said, finishing my coffee. Enjoy your day, Louis. And your relationship with Linda. However long it lasts. I walked out, leaving him standing there with his coffee, looking shaken. That evening, Linda called me, furious. What did you do? She shouted before I could even say hello. Louis just broke up with me. He said you came to his work, threatened him. I didn't threaten anyone, I said calmly. We just had a conversation. You told him about my first marriage. You made me sound like some kind of serial cheater. I told him facts. You were married before. That marriage ended. You're married now, and you're having an affair. What part of that isn't true? You twisted everything. You made it sound like I'm some kind of monster. Linda, you've been lying to me for 5 months. You've been sleeping with another man while wearing my ring. You've been stealing from our joint account to fund your affair. I didn't have to twist anything. The facts speak for themselves. She was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. I see. This is your revenge, isn't it? You can't stand that I found someone who makes me happy, so you're trying to ruin it. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I simply told Louis the truth. If the truth ruins your relationship, maybe that says something about the relationship. You've changed, she said. You're not the man I married. No, I agreed. I'm not. The man you married trusted you completely. Believed everything you said. Would never have looked through your messages or tracked your car. You destroyed that man, Linda. What you're talking to now is what's left. She hung up without another word. The divorce took 4 months to finalize. Victor was as good as his word. We presented all the evidence, the messages, the photos, the financial records, the tracker data. Linda's lawyer tried to argue that I'd invaded her privacy, that the evidence was obtained illegally. But since it was a no-fault divorce state, and we were going for equitable distribution rather than trying to prove fault, most of it was just for show. In the end, we split everything 50-50. The house was sold, proceeds divided. She got her car, I got my workshop and all my tools. The joint account was split down the middle, minus the amounts I could prove she'd spent on the affair. Those came out of her half. Bailey stayed with me. Linda didn't fight for him. She'd never really been a dog person anyway. The day the divorce was finalized, I sat in Victor's office and signed the final papers. 7 years of marriage, reduced to a stack of legal documents. How do you feel? Victor asked. Empty, I admitted. Angry. Relieved. I don't know. That's normal. Give it time. Time. Everyone kept telling me I needed time. Time to heal. Time to move on. Time to forget. But how much time does it take to forget someone who was your whole world? The first 6 months after the divorce were the hardest. I threw myself into my work. Took on more projects than I could reasonably handle. Worked from dawn until late into the night, until I was too exhausted to think, too tired to dream. Friends tried to help. My buddy Hank invited me to barbecues, introduced me to single women, tried to get me out of the house. Victor invited me to firm parties, his colleagues' daughters, somehow always in attendance. Even my parents, who lived down in Bloomington, started calling more often, worried about their son living alone in that big house with just a dog for company. But I wasn't ready. Every woman I met, I compared to Linda. Every conversation, every laugh, every gesture reminded me of her. Not the her who'd betrayed me, but the her I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. The woman who'd laughed at my terrible woodworking puns. Who'd brought me coffee in the workshop on cold mornings. Who'd dance with me in the kitchen while we cooked dinner. That woman was gone. Maybe she'd never really existed. Maybe it had all been an illusion, and I'd been too blind to see it. Eventually, Victor introduced me to Eva. She worked at his firm, smart and attractive, with a quick wit and a warm smile. We went on a few dates. She was easy to talk to, share my love of old movies and good food. Under different circumstances, I might have fallen for her. But I couldn't stop comparing her to Linda. When Eva laughed, it wasn't the same. When she talked about her day, I found myself wondering what Linda would have said. When Eva reached for my hand across the dinner table, I remembered Linda's hand in mine. After a month, I ended it. Eva was gracious about it, said she understood. I think she'd seen it coming. I hadn't exactly been present during our dates, always distracted, always somewhere else in my mind. A few months later, I tried again with Sharon, not Linda's friend, but a music teacher Hank introduced me to at a summer barbecue. She was sweet and gentle, the complete opposite of Linda, in every way. I thought maybe that's what I needed, someone completely different, someone who wouldn't remind me of what I'd lost. But that didn't work either. I realized I wasn't looking for someone different from Linda. I was looking for someone exactly like Linda, the Linda I thought I knew, the Linda before the betrayal. And that person didn't exist. After Sharon, I stopped trying. Stopped accepting blind dates from well-meaning friends. Stopped going to social events where I might meet someone. I threw myself deeper into my work, took on bigger projects, taught woodworking classes at the community college on weekends. People started calling me a hermit. My parents worried. Hank staged an intervention one Sunday afternoon, showed up at my workshop with beer and pizza, and a lecture about not letting Linda win by becoming a bitter recluse. I'm not bitter, I told him. I'm just done. With dating, with trying to replace what I had. I'm content with my work, with Bailey, with my life as it is. That's not living, man. That's existing. There's a difference. Maybe he was right, but existing was all I had the energy for. A year passed, then another. Life settled into a routine. Work, Bailey, occasional dinners with friends, Sunday phone calls with my parents. It was quiet, peaceful even. The pain had dulled to a constant ache, something I'd learned to live with, like an old injury that acts up when it rains. I rarely thought about Linda anymore. Okay, that's a lie. I thought about her all the time. But I'd gotten better at pushing those thoughts away, at focusing on the present instead of dwelling on the past. And then, on a cold November evening 2 years after the divorce, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I'd deleted but still recognized. "William, can we talk? I need to see you." I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was to delete it, block the number, pretend I'd never seen it. But curiosity got the better of me. I thought about it for 2 days. Argued with myself. What could she possibly want to say after all this time? What could she say that would make any difference? Finally, I replied with the address of a coffee shop on the north side of town. Neutral territory. Public place. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a table in the corner. She'd changed her hair, shorter now, less styled. Wore minimal makeup. She looked older, more tired. But still beautiful in that way that made my chest ache. "Hi," she said as I sat down. "Hi." We ordered coffee. Sat in awkward silence while we waited. When the barista brought our drinks, we both reached for the sugar at the same time, our hands briefly touching. We both pulled back quickly, as if burned. "You wanted to talk," I said finally. "Yes. I wanted to apologize. For everything. For the affair, for the lies, for the money. For destroying what we had." I listened without speaking. "Louis and I broke up about a month after you talked to him," she continued. "He said he couldn't trust a woman who cheats. Ironic, right? He helped me cheat on you, but couldn't trust me because of it." "What do you want me to say?" I asked. "I don't know. Sorry? Understanding. I don't even know why I reached out. I can't stop thinking about what I did. Every day. The look on your face when you confronted me. The way you looked at me in court, like I was a stranger. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was selfish and stupid. You didn't just destroy us, I said quietly. You destroyed me. The man I was, the man who trusted completely, who loved without reservation. That man doesn't exist anymore. You killed him. She flinched. William, I spent 2 years trying to move on, I continued. Tried dating other women. Tried to rebuild my life. But you're always there in my head. Not you as you are now, but you as I thought you were. The woman I married. The woman who didn't exist. She did exist, Linda said softly. That woman was real. I was that woman for a long time. And then I got lost. Started taking you for granted, started looking for excitement elsewhere, convinced myself I deserved more than what we had. But I was wrong. What we had was everything. Past tense, I noted. I know. She wiped her eyes. I know I ruined it. I know I don't deserve another chance. But William, I still love you. I never stopped loving you, even when I was with Louis. And I know that's not fair to you, that it probably hurts to hear it, but it's true. I looked at her across the table. 2 years ago, those words would have meant everything. They would have been what I'd been waiting to hear, the magic phrase that would make everything okay again. But now they just made me tired. I loved you too, I said. Probably still do, in some twisted way. But love isn't enough, Linda. It never was. So that's it. It's over? There's no chance for us. I thought about saying yes. Thought about standing up and walking away, cutting her out of my life forever. It would be the smart thing to do. The healthy thing. But I couldn't. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to tell you to go to hell, that you destroyed any chance we had. But another part. I paused, trying to find the words. Another part remembers who we were before. Wonders if we could ever get back to that. We could try, she said quickly. We could start over, slowly. Not as husband and wife, just as two people who used to know each other. See where it goes. It wouldn't be the same, I warned. It could never be the same. I'll never trust you the way I did before. There will always be that doubt, that fear that you'll leave again when things get boring. I understand. I deserve that. But William, I've spent 2 years learning to appreciate what I had. What I lost. I'm not the same person I was. And I know you're not either. But maybe 2 different people can build something new. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But I'd believed her before, and look where that got me. This would take time, I said. Years, maybe. And I can't promise anything. Can't promise I'll ever fully forgive you or trust you again. I know. I'm willing to try anyway. To do whatever it takes. We finished our coffee in silence. When we left, I walked her to her car. She turned to me before getting in. William. Yeah. Thank you. For not just walking away. For giving me even the smallest chance. I nodded. Watched as she drove away. Bailey whimpered from my truck, sensing my confusion. I know, boy, I told him. I don't know if this is right either. But maybe that's the point. Maybe there is no right answer. The next few months were strange. We met for coffee every few weeks. Kept the conversations light. Work, family, Bailey's latest antics. Neither of us brought up the past. It hung between us, unspoken but ever present. Slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild something. Not what we had before, that was gone forever. But maybe something new. Something more honest, more real. She told me about her life after the divorce. About Louis realizing she'd cheated with him and wondering if she'd cheat on him. About losing friends who'd taken my side. About her family's disappointment. About how she'd started therapy, trying to understand why she'd done what she'd done. I told her about my life too. About the women I'd tried to date and failed. About the long nights in a workshop, the loneliness, the slow process of learning to live alone. We were both damaged. Both carrying scars from what had happened. But maybe that's what made it work, in a strange way. We both understood loss now. Both understood what it meant to destroy something precious. One evening, about 6 months after that first coffee meeting, we were sitting in my workshop. I was showing her a rocking chair I was building for a client, explaining the joinery techniques. She asked questions, seemed genuinely interested. It reminded me of the early days when she'd spend hours in the workshop with me, just watching me work. I miss this, she said softly. Miss being part of your world. You left my world, I reminded her. Not cruel, just stating fact. I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. She ran her hand along the arm of the chair. William, do you think there's ever a chance we could try again? Really try, I mean. Not just coffee dates, but actually being together. I put down my tools. Looked at her carefully. She looked different than she had at that first meeting. More alive somehow, more present. Therapy and time had been good to her. I don't know, I said honestly. The trust is gone, Linda. That's not something you can just rebuild with a few coffee dates. I know, but we could try. I could prove to you day by day that I've changed. That I understand what I lost and would never risk it again. And what happens when things get hard again? When the routine sets in? When I'm spending too much time in a workshop and you're feeling lonely? Then I talk to you about it. Like I should have done before, instead of running to someone else. She moved closer. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I can promise I'll be honest. And faithful. And present. I wanted to believe her. But I'd believed her before. Let me think about it, I said. She nodded. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Over the next few weeks, I thought about little else. Talk to Victor about it. He advised against it. Talk to Hank. He said to follow my heart. Talk to my parents. They were divided. Mom hopeful, Dad skeptical. Finally, I made my decision. We met at our usual coffee shop. I could see the anxiety on her face as I sat down. Okay, I said. Okay, we can try. Really try. But with conditions. Her face lit up. Anything. Whatever you need. First, we take it slow. Dates, getting to know each other again. No jumping back into living together or getting remarried. Of course. Second, complete transparency. I need access to your phone, your accounts, everything. I know that sounds controlling, but I need to rebuild trust somehow. She didn't hesitate. Done. You can have all my passwords right now. Third, therapy. For both of us, together and separately. We both have work to do if this is going to function. Absolutely. I'll set up appointments this week. And fourth. I paused. You need to understand that I'll never forget what happened. It's always going to be there, in the back of my mind. Some days will be harder than others. There will be times when I'll see you on your phone and wonder who you're texting. Times when you're late coming home, and I'll assume the worst. That's my reality now, and you caused it. I understand, she said quietly. And I'll spend every day trying to show you that your fears are unfounded. However long it takes. It might take forever. Then I'll spend forever proving it. We started dating again. Slowly at first, dinner once a week, occasional movies, walks in the park with Bailey. It felt strange, like playing house with someone you used to be married to. We both stepped carefully around each other, afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. But gradually it got easier. She kept her promises, gave me all continue 18:46 her passwords, went to therapy every week, called when she'd be late. I tried to be present, to not let my paranoia ruin what we were building. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks. One night, 3 months in, her phone buzzed during dinner. A text from a number I didn't recognize. I felt my heart rate spike, felt that familiar clench of anxiety. Who is it? I asked, tried to keep my voice casual. She picked up the phone, glanced at it. Just my therapist, confirming next week's appointment. Want to see? She handed me the phone without hesitation. It was indeed her therapist. But the fact that I'd asked, that I needed to check, we both felt the weight of it. I'm sorry, I said. I shouldn't have. No, it's okay, she interrupted. You have every right to ask. Every right to verify. I did this to us. I'll live with the consequences. And that was the thing she did. Every time I got paranoid, every time I asked where she'd been or who she was talking to, she answered patiently. Never got defensive, never accused me of not trusting her. She understood that trust wasn't something she could demand. It had to be earned back, slowly, painfully, over time. A year passed. Then another. We moved in together, a new place, not the house we'd shared before. Started fresh, in a small townhouse near Broad Ripple. She proposed we get Bailey a friend, and we adopted a rescue cat named Scout. We fell into new routines, Sunday morning coffee runs, Thursday night cooking together, weekend projects around the house. It wasn't the same as before. It was different. More careful, more conscious. We didn't take each other for granted anymore. Every day felt like a choice we both actively made, to be together, to work through our issues, to build something better than what we'd had. The scars were still there. Probably always would be. Some days I'd see her texting and feel that spike of anxiety. Some nights I'd wake up in a cold sweat, dreaming about finding those messages again. But they got less frequent over time. The wounds were healing, even if they'd never fully disappear. 3 years after the divorce, 5 years after the affair, I asked her to marry me again. Not because I'd forgotten what happened, I never would. Not because I'd fully forgiven her, I wasn't sure that was possible. But because I'd realized something important. Life is long and people are complicated. We all make mistakes, some worse than others. Linda had made a terrible mistake, one that destroyed our marriage and nearly destroyed me. But she'd also spent years trying to make it right, trying to become someone worthy of trust again. And maybe that's what love really is, not the fairy tale romance of never doing wrong, but the messy reality of hurting each other and choosing to heal anyway. The conscious decision to build something meaningful despite our flaws and failures. She said yes, tears streaming down her face. We got married in a small ceremony, just family and close friends. No big reception, no fanfare. Just 2 damaged people promising to try again, to do better. To be honest, even when it hurts, that I can't say we live happily ever after. That's not how real life works. We had good days and bad days. Days when everything felt right and days when the past crashed over me like a wave. Days when she'd see me looking at her with suspicion and have to fight back tears. Days when we both wondered if we made a mistake trying to resurrect what had died, but we kept trying. Kept showing up for each other. Kept doing the work, and somehow that was enough, because maybe the real revenge wasn't destroying her life or making her suffer. Maybe the real revenge was this, making her live every day knowing what she'd lost and almost didn't get back. Making her work for every ounce of trust, every moment of peace, every smile that wasn't shadowed by guilt. Making her see every day what we could have had all along if she'd just been honest. She'll never forget what she did. I'll never forget what she did. And in a strange way, that constant awareness keeps us honest, keeps us trying, keeps us from taking what we have for granted, that it's not perfect. It's not a fairy tale, but it's real and it's ours, and somehow that's more than I thought I'd have after finding those messages on a cold April morning. Bailey still greets me at the door every evening. Scout has warmed up to me, though he's clearly Linda's cat. We have Taco Tuesdays and movie nights. We argue about whose turn it is to do dishes and whose family to visit for holidays. We live a beautifully ordinary life, and every single day I see it in her eyes, the knowledge of what she almost lost, the gratitude that I gave her another chance, the fear that I might change my mind. That fear will never fully go away for either of us, and maybe that's exactly as it should be. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new, interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.